What is the difference between donkeys and mules? Here on this channel, we take great pride in helping people learn how to differentiate between similar wild animals. But how well do you know your domestic animals? Because we have a fun one today: donkeys and mules. The following video is the most comprehensive look at what the similarities and, more importantly, differences between these two animals are. So let's head to the farm and get to know donkeys and mules a little better. Donkeys. Donkeys are domesticated members of the equidae or horse family, which play a number of roles for people, chiefly as beasts of burden. These familial groupings make them relatives of all horses, zebras, and a bunch of other extinct equids. There are two schools of thought when it comes to their classification. The first is to regard them as a standalone species. Those who subscribe to this belief refer to the animal as Equus asinus. Other scientists regard domestic donkeys as a subspecies of the African wild ass, Equus africanus, the animal they are derived from, and therefore call them Equus africanus asinus. For a long time, the donkey was called an ass, a term that originated somewhere in Eurasia a very long time ago. In English, the females were called she-asses. The term donkey has equally murky origins, and much unreliable speculation surrounds its etymology. Some say it comes from the Spanish title Don, while others claim they were named after a guy called Duncan who had remarkably large ears. In truth, we'll never really know where that word came from. What we do know is that the word began growing in the late 18th century during a time when language was being cleaned up, and vulgar-sounding words like ass became less appropriate in polite society. She-ass was also replaced with Jenny, which also led to the use of Jack for male donkeys. Young donkeys are simply known as foals. Donkeys are among the oldest domestic animals around, having first joined forces with humans between 5,000 and 7,000 years ago in Africa. The general belief is that modern domestic donkeys trace their ancestry to the Somalian and Nubian subspecies of African wild ass. Despite being domesticated long after cattle, donkeys proved to be a smash hit in Eastern and North Africa, given their stamina and drought resistance. Donkeys also didn't chew cud as much as cows, which allowed the nomadic tribes that domesticated them to save time and travel further with donkeys as pack animals. The animals also played a huge role in ancient Egypt, as they quickly became the backbone of overland trade in the region's harsh landscape. In the Old Kingdom, members of the royal families and nobility took them as status symbols. The more donkeys you had, the bigger deal you were. Donkeys have been found in the tombs of pharaohs, who were doubtlessly eager to continue flexing their wealth in the afterlife. The Egyptians were also among the first people to use the animals for proper agricultural activities like plowing. They also harvested their meat and milk. By 1800 BCE, the Mesopotamians had taken over as lords of the donkey. Breeding in this neck of the woods was instrumental to the spread of the animals throughout Arabia and eventually the rest of Eurasia. During these days, breeders got creative and started specializing. In Damascus, they bred large donkeys for riding in general commuting and war. In other parts of Syria, they developed smaller breeds, more suited to female and child riders. Eventually, the Greeks and the Romans got a hold of them and spread them throughout their respective empires. Interestingly, some cultures depicted the Greek deity of wine, Dionysus, as a donkey, probably because Greek traders brought the vino on the backs of, you guessed it, donkeys. Then, in 1495 CE, donkeys made it to the Americas for the first time, having hitched a ride with a certain Christopher Columbus on the second of his transatlantic voyages. By 1600, they had arrived in the land that would become the United States, where they thrived as beasts of burden for farmers and miners. Today, there are north of 40 million domestic donkeys worldwide, so many that some even live feral in the wild. There are about 185 different breeds in total. The greatest numbers are found in developing nations where basic agriculture is still fairly dominant. They mostly work as pack animals, hauling goods and people to and fro, or as draft animals for pulling carts, plows, and pretty much anything their owners hitch them to. Though famously docile, they can have an aggressive side. In some cases, this aggression is applied toward guard work, protecting homes and livestock from thieves or unwelcome animals. Their preferred method of attack is to rear on their hind legs and strike with their front hooves. Away from work, donkeys are an ever-increasing choice of pet for people with the space for it. Their calm, easygoing nature and somewhat cute looks are quite appealing, to be honest. Then we have feral donkeys. These are found all over the world and are typically descended from abandoned and discarded donkeys. Notable populations are in California and Australia, where they pose invasive risks like crop destruction and disease. Donkey breeding also extends to hybridization, where donkeys are crossed with other equids. One of the earliest were the Syrian and Mesopotamian kungas, the hybrid result of domestic donkeys and wild asses. Since then, a bunch of interesting hybrids have been produced, as we shall soon see. Mules. Without a doubt, mules are the most prominent of all donkey-related hybrids. That's right, a mule is part donkey and part horse. More specifically, a mule is what you get when you cross a jack with a female horse. In contrast, a hybrid resulting from crossing a male horse and a jenny is called a hinny. Now you're probably thinking, why are mules the more popular of the two hybrids? Well, there's a bunch of reasons. For starters, there are mating behavioral differences within the parental pairings. Jacks are far more willing to mate with female horses than male horses are to mate with jennies. Secondly, is the issue of uterus space. Female horses are generally bigger than female donkeys, so if a jack impregnates a mare, the foal will have much more room to develop than a hybrid foal in a jenny's uterus. Then there are hormonal differences, particularly between female horses and jennies. Jennies produce lower quantities of the hormone progesterone, which is essential for developing a thick uterus lining during pregnancy. Because of this hormone shortage, a jenny's uterus may be underprepared to incubate a hybrid foal, which results in the loss of the embryo. Then there are birthing risks. Since horses are often bigger than donkeys, birthing hybrids is much more dangerous for jennies than for mares. Ultimately, mules are more desirable than hinnies because they are faster and safer to breed and often come out bigger, stronger, and more capable of handling serious workloads. Mules and hinnies can be either male or female. However, regardless of sex, mules and hinnies usually resemble their fathers in the front and their mothers at the back. For mules, this means they have donkey-like heads, complete with long ears, and horse-like rumps, including a horse-like tail. Additionally, these hybrids are infertile and cannot reproduce. This is because their developing gametes, another word for sperm or eggs, cannot go through meiosis properly, and thus cannot merge with opposite gametes. In other words, conception is highly unlikely even when mated with pure donkey or horse stock, but it's not entirely impossible. Mules were among the earliest attempts at crossing donkeys with something. They emerged within the Mesopotamian sphere of influence sometime in the 3rd millennium BCE. Mules proved to be such a big hit that the previously popular kunga was cast aside and forgotten about. Mules grew in popularity due to their fine blend of the best of both the horse and donkey worlds, a blend that also ironed out weaknesses from both parental species. For instance, mules are considered more obedient, intelligent, and trainable than typical donkeys, yet they can live for longer than horses. Depending on the genetics involved, mules may be significantly larger than donkeys while retaining much of their hardiness. This means they have greater capacity to work and can even perform a wider range of tasks like being ridden. They have a well-documented history, being depicted in works of art originating from Anatolia to biblical Israel. The Greek poet Homer also wrote about the mules of Asia Minor in one of his great works, the Iliad. Mules also feature quite a lot in current-era history. After their apparent introduction to the Americas by Columbus, they went on to catch the eye of the first U.S. president, George Washington. President Washington is probably the most famous mule breeder of all time, and he is now regarded as a pioneer because his hybridizations were thought of as pointless by folks who appreciated the respective qualities of donkeys and horses. However, by the 19th century, Washington had been proven right, and then some. Not only were mules bigger and stronger than donkeys, they were more pliable too, while their maintenance demands and costs were far lower than those of horses. As a result, They were a popular resource for farmers, traders, prospectors, fisherfolk, and even the military. In addition to their impressive strength, mules are renowned for their sure-footedness on terrain that is extremely treacherous for humans and many other animals. Muddy paths, soaked beaches, steep mountain passes, it's all in a day's work for a mule. Despite their reliability, many mules soon found themselves out of a job following the impact of industrialization in the developed world. By the tail end of the 20th century, vehicles and tractors could haul and farm much more in much less time than any mule. These days, mules are more active in the developing parts of the world. The United Nations World Food Program is famed for using mules to transport food and relief to otherwise inaccessible areas. Like donkeys, mules are also kept as pets, while some people harvest them for meat. Other notable differences. Donkeys have noticeably flatter backs than mules, whose own backs have a curvature similar to horses. Like donkeys, mules have pretty short manes. However, their overall coats are short and fine like horses, not shaggy like donkeys. A mule is much more likely to be more colorful than the typical gray of a donkey. Depending on parentage, mules can be anywhere from white to black to chestnut and tawny.